I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I included my self-evaluation for the committee to consider. I have continued to use the draft rubric from the state this year, which was included for reference. The process of self-reflection allows me time to consider many of the facets of the position and how I can serve the community better. The upcoming year is going to require bold leadership to solve myriad issues involved with the current health and economic crisis. I look forward to your feedback. Summer meetings. It's likely that guidance on returning to school and financial information about next fiscal year will come too late for our regularly scheduled meetings this year. We have one more scheduled meeting on June 23rd, where we may have the guidance from the Commissioner of Education, but that would leave very little time for administration to come up with the total plan for Marlborough. I would ask the committee to consider scheduling meetings in the summer to be updated on reopening and review any financial information from the Commonwealth or federal government. The current economic situation may result in the City Council having to take emergency action on the budget, which could require the school committee to consider reductions as well. I've identified 3 dates to hold if you want to consider this and act at the next meeting: July 14th, July 28th, and additionally, I would recommend we consider a meeting on August 11th in case there is any business the committee will need to act on before the school year starts. School census. It's become apparent to my administration that we need to develop and implement a school census immediately. We need to know exactly how many students will take the bus, how many will walk or be driven, and how many students may have moved during this time frame and may not have provided notice to us yet. What we generally do in the first few weeks of school needs to be accomplished 100% before we can issue any plans to parents. Reopening groups. I directed my staff to begin working groups to address our reopening in the fall. It's highly likely that a hybrid model will be in place for education of our students in the fall of 2020. There will be significant disruption to families, as any hybrid model does not follow a traditional school day, and there will be an impact on schedules. Our working groups are going through the process of brainstorming as many solutions as we can create in the best learning environment we can deliver. Lastly, I'd like to address our committee, our students, and our parents. George Floyd's murder has ignited the nation's desire to speak out against violence, specifically violence against the Black community. I abhor the institutional racism and callousness that led to Mr. Floyd's murder and the deaths of many men and women of color before him. And I reaffirm my commitment to protect our right to free speech. We stand together to reject hate. A trusted colleague set this in perspective for me. I understand I cannot understand, but I stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Any questions from the committee?
Catherine Hennessy.
Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. I know we don't need to vote on this necessarily tonight, but I do really want to express my interest in having the meetings over the summer. I think it's really imperative to make sure that we're actively involved in open communications about all of the continual changes, considering what we've seen over the last 2 months. Things are changing on a very regular basis, and I think it would be imperative to make sure that we have something regularly set up, especially with having the opportunity of doing the calls like we have been doing and we're doing right now. So I would appreciate if everyone would really put that into consideration, because we can do it from wherever we are. So thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Ms. Bodenhenger.
Thank you. It's not a question, but it's in regards to superintendent evaluation. Do you want me to address that now, or should we wait and do it in members forum?
Well, you can address it now. You're the czar of evaluation, so.
Okay. So with the superintendent providing us his self-evaluation, that triggers our process to complete our part of his evaluation. I asked Patty Sibilio to forward all of you a blank evaluation form. It's the same form that the superintendent used, but without his answers on it, so there's room for us all to put our information onto it. And historically, we have always done it, and basically the process for the public is that we all individually fill out the evaluation. They all come to me, and I compile all of the information into one evaluation form that is presented publicly, usually the last meeting of the year, which is in 2 weeks. So I am going to ask all of the members to find that email from Patty Sibilio and start working on your evaluation. Ideally, I would like to have it by next Tuesday, the 16th. I know life gets in the way, but let's do our best to try to get it as close to the 16th as possible, so I'll have the opportunity to compile it all and have it prepared for the next meeting. Did you hear that, Mayor Pigeon?
I did.
Okay, thanks.
The Bergeron had to fill it out for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't have some on my report. I just want to thank virtually the entire community came together this weekend to support our seniors. What a great weekend. I just want to say thank you literally to everyone. If I start naming them, there's no way I'm going to name them all. So I want to thank everyone on the screen there that I'm seeing right now, and thank everyone in the community who played a part in making that happen.
Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. MCAS graduation requirement. In April, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education voted to modify the competency determination requirement for current high school seniors during the COVID-19 emergency. Under this change, the Department of Education created a system in which seniors who had not passed one or more of the high school MCAS tests were able to earn the competency determination through successful completion of a relevant high school course. On May 26th, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education also voted to modify the science and technology engineering part of the competency determination requirement for current high school freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. So members of the classes of 2021 through 2023. Under this change, the competency determination in science, technology, and engineering will be awarded upon demonstration that the student earned credit for a course in the relevant subject matter and demonstrated competency in one of the 4 tested disciplines, either biology, chemistry, physics, technology, engineering, during their high school career. The process and timeline for awarding the modified CD will be announced as a later date. Students in the class of 2024 who are in the 8th grade this year and will enter grade 9 next year are expected to participate in science, technology, and engineering testing in either 2021 or 2022, according to our school or district plan for high school science, technology, engineering testing. These decisions affect only the high school science, technology, and engineering tests. Members of the class of 2022, this year's sophomores, will take the 10th grade English language arts and math tests during the 2020-21 school year at a date to be determined. Summer school update. Director of Student Services, Jody O'Brien, will be updating you on special education extended year services in her report. In addition to special education extended year services, we will be offering summer programming for K through 8 Title I students, K-12 English learners, and Marlborough High School credit recovery students. All classes are being planned for live remote learning instruction and, as needed, some one-on-one remote tutoring sessions. This live remote is a transitional plan that we're implementing. Director of Student Services, Jody O'Brien, and I are updating you tonight on our reopening working group. Our focus will be instruction. Director of EL, Lynn Medallion, Rupal Patel, Elton Thomas, Mary Altanoff, Jennifer Burgos, and Tracy Dunning are the regular contributors of the Instruction Committee. On March 17th, 2020, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education suspended all in-person instruction in Massachusetts public schools. Since that time, we have transitioned from a focus on enrichment to remote instruction that is introducing new content and reinforcing targeted curriculum standards. Although the state will be providing statewide directives, we are focusing on recommendations for common instructional practices, priority areas, and a summer professional development plan to prepare for the fall. We will be preparing a flexible plan that can apply to in-person instruction, full-time remote learning, or a hybrid model that allows for both in-person and remote learning. The committee is meeting 3 times a week and will be requesting teachers and administrators to join us on targeted topics over the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Ms. Senesi.
Thank you very much. Mary, thank you for the information. Obviously, a lot of information. And I recognize you may not necessarily have the answer to this question or these questions, but if we can at least put it out on the table, with many of the standardized testings moving out and recognizing that there's a portion of the learning that was at an interesting stage the end of this year, I'm guessing that we're going to need to put together some form of plan to work on catching up to prepare kids appropriately for these tests. And that's, I guess, a concern that I have is, which again, I recognize you're probably working on that kind of a plan, but I just want to voice my concern about the standardized tests and kids having missed a good portion of the school year and or in a different way of learning. And I don't know how you all are feeling. I mean, we need to obviously recognize what the state is telling us to do, but I'm sure that there's a portion of concern that you all may have as well.
I think that all of us across the state have been clear that it is an area of concern for us. And the first thing that our committee focused on instruction has looked at is, as I mentioned, some priority areas. And there, Rupal and Jody are both here and we'll all nod and say that the high school, the upcoming, the sophomores and the juniors, because both of them, there's an impact to both groups, and them being talked about being a priority group that we will focus on as one of the many. We can't deal with every student potentially, hopefully at some point they'll all be in person, but if we have priority groups and specialized plans for sight learning groups, yes, those 2 groups would be on our list of priorities.
Thank you. I mean, I don't have the answer. That's not what I'm here for, but I do have those same concerns, and I'm sure that there's many in our community that would be echoing those concerns, whether it be the parents or the kids themselves. I think many of our students tried to do their best as well as obviously the staff, tried to do their best on working to continue to receive and provide instruction. But I think realistically, we all know that all of us learn in different ways, and trying to make this adaptation has certainly had its challenges in many arenas. So I'm appreciative that we're going to need to work through this testing. I certainly hope the state is not going to hold us over our heads, though, should some of the test scores not show marked improvements. And, you know, I just think we all need to be voicing that we need to be working together, and that it doesn't put any of our districts in jeopardy from their standpoint while we're all trying to accomplish getting the kids to learn. So
I'm just going to add one more thing. We are all very, very proud of the work that the faculty of the Marlborough Public Schools has done over the last few months, and a majority of our students. We are also looking forward to having a point where we can actually, in person, model for the students what the remote learning will look like if we go to additional remote classes, and the expectations for what that will look like on a daily basis, so that they see that as part of their regular school day and not something that is not the same. So that will be one of our goals.
thank you. And then my last would be more around the summer school update, especially trying to support our special education students, as I'm sure that has added some additional challenges for our staff to really try and meet all of those students and provide that support. And I will be looking forward to hearing more about that programming and how it starts to unfold for the district. So thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Ms. O'Brien.
Good evening. Special education reports. So first I'm going to talk about the evolution of special ed during our closure. So when school first closed in March, districts received guidance from the Department of Ed that special ed services for students would look differently in remote learning than they would in person. And the message from Russell Johnson during the weekly calls that he's had with special ed directors had been the quote at every meeting of everyone was to operate out of confidence and not out of fear, because the first thing that all the special ed directors were asking about was compliance. And the goal was to focus on student and family needs, and, you know, don't really worry so much about the IEPs to begin with, and just checking in on the families and looking at health and safety first. So once we started going into to phase 2, which was the directions and the guidance from the state of, instead of just doing where originally they said no new content, but now to start actually moving forward with new content for students and providing more robust educational services. Our special ed teachers were working collaboratively with general education teachers throughout the closure during the different phases, and ongoing throughout have been continuing to improve on their services. Some of the areas that we've struggled with the most have been like occupational therapy, physical therapy, which oftentimes has hands-on. Our most needy and vulnerable students with high needs, students that need ABA services, our nonverbal students, those have been challenging, although our special ed teachers and related service providers have really stepped up to the plate and have come up with creative ways of providing instruction to them. Also, during the time with the guidance that came out, it was that the instructions were to give about half of a school day. So the guidance with Russell Johnston was, well, if general ed or our school day is now half of a school day remotely, then we were advising our special education staff to kind of collaborate with general ed and try to focus on giving about half of the IEP services if they could. If they could do more, then great, but we really want to try to meet the target of at least half of that. Then as we were going along, Secretary of Education at the federal level had denied a request for a waiver of any of the IDEA regulations during the school closures because of the national health crisis. And because of that, states and districts are held to a free and appropriate public education based on what is actually in the IEPs for the services. The service delivery grids are written for a structured, in-person, 30-hour school week. And because the federal government has not provided any waiver of any of the regulations, districts are still obligated and bound by that. We haven't gotten any answers from the Department of Ed on compensatory services, on what that would look like. And they said that that guidance wouldn't come out until schools open. But I want to let you know, like compensatory, I want to give everybody a heads up that that there is the potential for compensatory services when we do open. We don't know what that would look like. It would be individual bases, but it's not minute for minute of what students missed. So for instance, if you tallied up a student was supposed to receive 20 speech and language, 30-minute speech and language services. That does not mean that the child is then owed 20 30-minute speech and language services. The IEP team is going to have to look at what the impact of the closure was and the impact of lack of different types of services and come up with a determination of what types of things need to be put into place in addition to the IEP when we come back in. So no one knows what that will look like. The Department of Ed hasn't given us any answers. Frankly, I think they're still looking for or waiting for the federal government to be able to provide that guidance as well. You know, it's just really, really frustrating as districts trying to plan services for students when we're getting guidance from the Department of Ed probably 3-4 weeks after we needed it. So we're continuously adapting and changing and improving. So our message to our staff has been, do as much as you can now to reduce claims later. Also during the remote instruction, our educational team leaders, right off the bat, at the start of the closure, was able to utilize Microsoft Teams to be able to hold virtual IEP team meetings and getting agreement from parents in order to comply with IEP timelines. Any initial evaluations or reevaluations of students that have been on hold because they require in-person assessments to be conducted, I'm going to look to see if we're able to do any of those during the summer, to see if some of our school psychologists can come in utilizing the health and safety guidelines and see if we can chip away at some of those evaluations so that we don't have a backlog of evaluations that need to be conducted when we are back in school. And I do have to commend our MEA and in collaboration to be able to do those virtual IEP team meetings. because we were able to have a great working relationship with our MEA right off the bat, as far as coming to an agreement around what the expectations were of teachers during the closure. We were able to do that, have IEP meetings like starting that first and second week of closure, where a lot of other districts were held up in being able to implement that because they were having to do a lot of bargaining with their unions. So I do have to thank the MEA on their collaboration to be able to do that. Also, our assistant principals have been doing the same thing for 504 meetings and holding those virtually, so we're able to get those done. And our IEPs, we've been able to use DocuSign, which our HR department had originally implemented. And that has been great because we've been able to go paperless and email out to parents an electronic copy of the IEP for them to be able to review and then electronically sign through DocuSign, and then we get that back. So that's been a great addition to our processes. So our summer extended year services for special education. This closure has been a fluid situation, and there's always changes going on. So what I originally reported to you on Thursday has already changed. So originally we were planning on remote services this summer. And at the time, that was based on guidance that we had received from the Department of Education, that they said, you know, most likely districts should be planning on remote services. And different factors that we considered was analyzing the governor's plan for phases, group transportation, and using the utilization of the health and safety guidelines. At the time, there was very little information as to what that would look like. So we felt that that was going to be difficult to safely transport students. And the commissioner's call, he had indicated, you know, parents could transport students to the summer programs and ask for mileage reimbursement, which for some of our families, that would be a possibility. But for Marlborough, there are many families who would not have the capacity to be able to transport their student and drop them off for in-person services. And that would have then become a have and have-nots on who receives in person. In addition, PPE equipment is in short supply. We do have some, but the level of PPE equipment that we would need for students in our Pathways and Connections program, the paras and behavior technicians that provide one-to-one services, would need to have gloves, mask, face shield, and the guidance that has come out does not have gowns checked off. However, that's not in line with the CDC recommendation. So like one-to-ones would be wearing gowns as well. So for those reasons, originally, we were planning on remote services for our students and having live sessions such as this with the teacher. Friday, we had received initial guidance where the Department of Ed was highly encouraging districts to provide some in limited services, in-person services, if possible, if we could meet the health and safety guidelines. And in reading the guidelines, felt it was still very, very difficult, if not impossible, to meet those guidelines for our most vulnerable students, particularly the Pathways and Connections students and early childhood. Sunday night, we received a more detailed guidance, which highly encouraged districts to do the in-person, but specifically for those groups that I just mentioned would be the most difficult to be able to provide in person for. They are asking districts to target our most vulnerable and high needs students for some in-person instruction. So today, John Fletcher and I, as well as Patty Brown, had gone on a call with John Garside from our Board of Health. I had forwarded him the guidance yesterday to have him review. So we had a conversation with him around what the guidance is, and went through any concerns with the guidance. And we feel that given the short notice that in 3 weeks our summer programs start, that doesn't give us a lot of time to be able to put this in place for the start of the summer program. However, it is a great opportunity for us to be able to midway through our summer program, that if we're able to train staff and be able to have students come in, even if it's for, say, a Monday and a Wednesday for an hour or two in rotations or something along that lines, that it would be a really good run for us to be able to practice with small groups and problem solve a lot of the issues that we're going to need to have solved for the fall. So, so this is a lot of information that was provided Sunday night to us. We had a couple of calls today, so I'm still in the planning stages. I don't have a lot of answers. We have a lot of potential ideas on how we can do this, but we would start remotely July 6th as we had planned, but hopefully within during the second or third week of the 5-week program would be able to target students and provide a combination of some limited in-person. So that's my update. If anybody has any questions, I may have some answers.
Questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Seeing none,
Chair?
Mr. Diaz.
Wait, just, it's not really a question, it's just a comment. I think, I can't remember whose report it was that in today's packet, but the concept of needing to be nimble and flexible and ever-changing, you know, the commissioner's killing us here. I mean, Sunday night, you're getting this kind of information. It's every week is a new week, and I think that, you know, as an entire district, on every level, we're going to have to, you know, stop and pivot, to use Mr. Rudzinski's kind of vernacular. It's amazing, and I commend you guys, you know, all the administrators, on your ability to just absorb all of this new stuff and make it work somehow. And you know, kudos. And if there's anything that we can do to support you, please don't hesitate to ask us.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr.
Can I
Diaz.
ask one? Sorry.
He's got to react
It's
a little
Kath.
quicker. What do you got?
Okay, so Jody, thank you for all the information. If families are having current situations or are wondering, you know, what may be coming, what's the process that you're hoping that they're going to follow after questions?
So at the end of, so during last week, we had made phone calls to all of the parents, informing them that our summer programming would be remote. And given that information, would parents want their child to participate or not? And today we sent out an email late today indicating to parents that we received guidance this weekend regarding the potential to do in person. So the message out to families was pretty much what I had, like the highlights of what I had just said, saying that we're going to start remote, and based on the guidance, we were going to try and look to do in-person services for our most what do we use? I think the most vulnerable or students with the highest needs in person in collaboration with our Board of Health and making sure that we have the safe health and safety protocols in place to be able to do so, and that we would have additional information available to parents as we go through the details of that.
Right, but if they are having questions, who do you want them to contact?
Oh, sorry, you had cut out earlier. So either they can either myself or John Fletcher.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. Teacher and District Education Center move. The moving of teachers to their new FY21 schools was completed on June 3rd. Thanks to the oversight of Andy White, our principals, and their teams, the moving process went smoothly and finished ahead of schedule. Teachers will now be able to unpack at the new elementary school before the school year is over. We sincerely appreciate the work from all the teachers who acted quickly to pack their rooms and make this move possible under a very tight timeline. Commissioner John Galoni and his team are now preparing the new District Education Center central offices at Whitcomb, and we anticipate that our staff will start occupying that space in mid-August. Transportation. The district has onboarded Stephen Phelan as our transportation coordinator. Steve has moved quickly towards implementing a bus pass system K through 12 for FY21 and will work closely with NRT so that the district can ensure we're effectively utilizing all assets at our disposal. We're excited to have this very qualified person in this position and expect that it will have a tangible impact on communication and service improvements in FY21. Food services. The district has now served over 170,000 meals to our community as of today, and our program is projected to exceed 200,000 meals by the time it concludes on June 26. This was only made possible due to quick actions by the city as well as district leaders and our partners at NRT and Aramark. We're grateful to all involved in making this program viable for so long during this pandemic, especially our food service employees and bus drivers who have been at the front lines every day serving our community. Thank you. Our food service director, Jenna Jensen, is now developing a meal continuity plan for the summer. Our draft plan includes utilizing 2 buses to deliver meals to the 15 stops that we know are well subscribed under the existing program. We're also going to open 2 schools at opposite sides of the city as pickup locations for families. The goal is to utilize the new school as a production site so that we can start live testing the systems at that site. PPE purchases. As the state leaders start providing us with hints on what school will look like in September, the district has moved to acquire PPE items that will allow us to keep both students and teachers safe. We have moved quickly to order items that may be potentially back-ordered once the final and official guidance from the state is released. Before finalizing what ended up being a large order, we met with Assistant Fire Chief Fred Flynn and Director of Public Health John Garside. We also coordinated this purchase with Procurement Officer Bev Sleeper to ensure that it met the necessary procurement requirements. While, as Jody mentioned in her report, additional PPE items are likely needed, we feel that we have a great arsenal and will be well supplied with items that will be required for reopening the buildings in the fall. FY21 state budget update. As of the writing of this report, there is no update on the state budget, as legislatures are still awaiting potential aid from the federal government. Thankfully, the Mayor and City Council's approval of an FY21 budget for the city will allow our district to continue operating normally past June 30th. We understand, however, that the eventual FY21 state budget may impact the city and therefore our district's FY21 budget. That's all.
Questions from the committee? Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. Just a comment. I actually want to say thank you to the mayor and to the city council on moving forward with the process. I think it's really critical, and even in light that the state has not moved forward, I do appreciate that you all understand the necessary needs for moving things forward, and we all recognize that we may need to make adaptations, but I do appreciate you following the process and moving it through, so thank you very much.
No, thank you. My conversations with Mike Ossing and John Irish, it was like, let's get something in our pocket so we can move forward. I think we have a good enough team and we get along enough to actually make adjustments as we move forward. So it was important. I was a little disappointed, hoping that we would get some numbers from the state, probably late July, early August. In a conversation I had in the last couple days, they may be talking September. So they just seem to be kicking this process down the road. I know they want to get farther into the year so they can have better idea of the numbers, but we have, it's just a domino effect. So we're just taking the precautions on our side, and we'll get through it together. Any other questions for Mr. Diaz? Seeing none. We're going to have public participation, and we ask you to dial in to 508-460-3503, extension 10121, if you would like to participate. Public participation is at 508-460-3503, extension 10121. Again, public participation, if anyone is interested, is 508-460-3503, extension 10121. Seeing none. Action items. Approval of overnight football trip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Panthers have gone to Eagle Hill for the past 8 years and spent an entire day practicing with the Wachusett Regional High School. The Wachusett coaching staff has invited MHS for the overnight as in past years. This will be the 6th years we have stayed for the night. Should restrictions related to COVID-19, be lifted, the MHS football team is requesting to spend Friday evening, August 21st, at the Eagle Hill School in Hardwick, Mass. Following the guidelines set forth by Governor Baker, the request is for the Marlborough High football team to be granted approval by the school committee to attend an overnight Eagle Hill School on Friday, August 21st, 2020. And I would like to ask Mr. Brzezinski if he has any comments at this time for the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only comment I have is obviously this is as fluid as everything else right now, and I just wanted to get this on the agenda and to you all. In the case that we are allowed to do it, I talked to the folks at Eagle Hill, and they're not even sure that the invitation is going to stand, although it is there now. Again, it's all up in the air based on the guidelines and what's put forward.
I had talked to the superintendent about this during the week, and my recommendation would be, because of the concerns I think we all have, if someone would like to make a motion to approve with the final decision being made by the superintendent, give the superintendent the authority to make the final decision later in the process, so he doesn't have to come back to the committee. I feel confident he'll make the right decision one way or the other, but that's my recommendation, and open it up for continued discussion. Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. I've been actually having conversations with Mr. Brzezinski, not specifically to only football, but I'm a part of the MIA Sports Medicine Committee, and we've been having discussions at minimum every 2 weeks, and are reviewing kind of, I guess, different guidelines from all different types of entities, whether it be through the athletic trainers union, different athletic director organizations, the Olympic Committee, NFHS, so we've been reviewing things, and I think your recommendation of us making a motion and putting it back to the superintendent to make the finite decision is really appropriate, considering that all of the different guidelines have been continuing to change. We right now on the Sports Medicine Committee are waiting for new guidelines that I believe we're supposed to be receiving on the 15th, and it's going to continue changing. And football, while it has been listed as one of the sports with more concerns relative to all the contact, it seems like we need to be open-minded till we really get more of a finite decision from folks. So I really support your idea of putting it back to the superintendent to make that finite decision. But thank you.
Any other discussion? Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
So move to approve this potential overnight situation for the football team, as long as it meets all of the appropriate guidelines from Governor Baker's office, MIAA, and such, with the final decision being made by the superintendent as we near this situation in the timeline.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. I'm going to call a roll. Mr. Gary is absent. Ms. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden-Hettinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. It is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosinski. No pressure right now on either of us, I guess.
FY21 school calendar. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to re-present the school calendar. We had noticed that we had made a mistake on the previous calendar. Memorial Day was listed on the 4th Monday instead of the appropriate day. So we're bringing forward the calendar again to school committee for approval. And we also received word that the proposed Marathon Monday holiday would not be going through at this time. So we felt like it's time to bring the calendar back.
I entertain a motion.
Move to approve the calendar with the amendments.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a roll. Mr. Gary is absent. Mrs. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden-Hettinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, it is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Policy removal, policy 6.210, tutoring. The policies are.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion for approval to remove this policy, as this is not something that our staff is allowed to do. We should not be having tutoring. So I need to see if this might be able to be removed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification for the committee, anyone looking at home. This policy was prior to a lot of the training that came out on the conflict of interest training that the state now requires biannually for all municipal employees. This is very well spelled out in that conflict of interest training. So therefore, since it's already spelled out so well, we didn't feel the need to have a second policy stating the obvious. Catherine, I apologize, Ms. Hennessy, if I jumped in there on you.
No apologies necessary. Thank you very much.
There's been a motion made and seconded to remove the policy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a roll. Mr. Gary is absent. Mrs. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden-Hettinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, it is removed. Turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So before you, we have 3 policies that I'd like to move forward for voting on tonight. The first one would be policy 3.500, private school review. And I'd like to make a motion for approval of this policy.
Are we gonna vote on these tonight, or are these rolling over to the next meeting?
These actually were for first read at our last meeting, so
Okay,
no, excuse me, I apologize. It is my own confusion, so I apologize. This is for first read, so my apologies. So the private school review, and there are 2 more policies, which are policy 6.160, substitute teacher, and policy 6.170, supervision. Those 2 policies, I already have received a couple comments from school committee members for some minor changes, more around punctuation, capitalization, that kind of thing, which I would be more than happy to circulate that when we would be moving forward at the next meeting for the final vote. So I'd like to make a motion to approve for the just first read.
motion made and seconded to approve them and put them on the next agenda, correct?
Thank you.
And we don't even take a vote on that, do we, Mr.?
I believe that we just lay them on the table for reading, for the first read, and we will take them up for approval on the June 23rd meeting.
Great.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I would like to suspend the rules to add an agenda item, please.
Been a motion to suspend the rules for an additional agenda item. All those in favor of accepting the communication? Mr. Gary is absent. Ms. Hennessy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden Henninger?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Caruso?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as you know, I circulated around a resolution. This was generated by a number of people from various school committees that kind of got together and put this resolution together regarding the COVID-19, basically unfunded mandates that are coming down the pike because of the amount of money that's going to need to be spent to prepare for some form, whatever form that takes, of reopening in the fall. So, because it's not on the agenda, I should probably read it. Do you think, Mr. Chair? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, this, for your consideration, this resolution is titled Marlborough School Committee Resolution COVID-19 State Funding. The intent is to have it sent to the governor, the Secretary of Education, Commissioner of Education, the Senate President, and the House Speaker, as well as our local officials, Senator Eldridge, Representative Gregoire, and Representative Gentile. Whereas if schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that each school district is able to pay for the enormous additional staffing, transportation, and material expenses required to do this. And whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without also ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines. Therefore, let it be resolved that the state must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates. We must ensure a statewide reopening that is safe, responsible, and equitable. There can be no unfunded mandates for COVID-19. And I feel like in our case, Mr. Diaz has, and Dr. and are you a doctor yet, Mr. Superintendent?
No, sorry.
Almost. And Mr. Bergeron have, gotten off quickly out of the gates to ensure that we have the materials that we potentially are going to need going forward. But it doesn't come without a cost. And I think that we are in good financial shape here in Marlborough. That's not the case across the state. And, I think as we all are keeping an eye to equity within our own district, the concept of equity across the state is very important as well. So I would request that we consider approving this and kind of signing on with the other school districts around the state that are prepared to send this resolution to Boston. I guess that's a
discussion? I do want to chime in. I understand the intent, but I think this time is a little bit different than some of the other years. There's some serious shortfalls coming across the communities and across the state. We can't even get a budget out of them, so we're talking about possibly 30% reductions in state revenues. So I cannot support that. I just think, I don't know where they would even find the money. If they took it to heart and actually did it, they couldn't implement the taxes in time to fund it. So at this point, I can't support it, the resolution, but I'll open it up for additional discussion. Is there any discussion? Ms. Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I support the intent of the resolution, I believe we also did receive an advisory from the governor actually today, who must have gotten wind of this resolution already, because he stated that while that diagram came out about the PPE and requirements, he also stated that don't expect that to be exactly what they're going to ask us to do. So, as the mayor said, we always get unfunded mandates, and there's going to be no money. There's going to be cuts. I get the intent of it, but I don't know. I think it's just going to fall on deaf ears at this point. So.
Ms. Hennessy.
So I have to say I'm really torn. I'm torn because I think we are in a fortunate position because many of us within the community, you all have done a great job on jumping ahead of things and planning. And that's been in a number of different areas, whether it's been PPE or whether it's been through our curriculum and instruction, whether it's trying to make sure that we had folks prepared to jump online. So I would say I'm so proud of Marlborough because what you all have done. And I'm concerned about other districts that did not have their act together. But I have a greater concern from the state standpoint when they can't even get a budget together and make any form of an approval on a state budget, and they know that we need to put some form of a line in the sand. So I'm torn. I do have the concerns, but I'm like, we can't even get a budget out of them. How can we start tossing back that we need to affirm that they need to be paying for all of this when we still don't even know what this is? So I'm just kind of, I'm at a loss. And although I don't say I'm against the resolution, I'm thinking that it may be jumping a little bit too soon to try and put it out there right now. I'm not sure.
Other questions, concern, comments from the committee?
Well, I guess I would just add that there are very few forums for local school committees to communicate with people that make decisions that affect us. And I feel that taking a stand and letting them know whether we think it's going to fall on deaf ears or not, that it is our responsibility to communicate with people and let them know that we, you know, everyone says we're all in this together, but municipalities are left hanging high and dry when large things like this come up. And yeah, I agree with everything everybody says, but I still think that it's, as local leaders in this community, I think it's our responsibility to communicate what values we have around issues of equity across the state to the leadership. So I am supporting this.
Are there any, is there any other discussion, comments, questions? Mr. Crusoe. Mr. Crusoe.
You're muted.
You're muted. Mr. Camuso is still muted.
I am not now.
There you go.
I said a word I shouldn't have. Sorry about that. Every time you open the paper, we just passed a massive education finance reform bill, which we're trying to get passed as well. I read things from the early childhood education people who are saying they should not have to suffer from. Everybody's got a problem with this situation happening, which comes to funding. I mean, I think the mayor's right. It's this situation. It's a tough one. We do not want to suffer any more than we have to, but nobody does. And I think it's a situation that's so fluid now that we may be saying things now that may not have to be said at this moment in terms of mandates and stuff. I mean, we're all here for the same reason. All of these various groups that are pushing for education funding in every area. And I think we need to sort of just wait and work it out together when things become more clear. So I'm not really overly anxious right at this moment to support this resolution myself.
Any other questions? Ms. Bodenhenger, do you know a timeline on this? Are they looking to send it now, or is this something that you can hold off on?
I think they're going to send it soon. All the other school committees are taking it up this week or next week when they're having their meetings. Okay. So they haven't specifically said. I mean, if you want to, we can delay it and see what happens in 2 weeks and take it up in 2 weeks. It may be too late by that point, but if people aren't prepared to vote on it, I understand.
It's your call.
I would, my pleasure would be to vote on it now, but it doesn't seem like we have enough votes to pass it anyway, so I don't know.
Might I make a suggestion that we table it until our next meeting so we can see a little bit more how maybe things evolve over the next 2 weeks, and maybe there might be some changes that some of us may feel a little bit more comfortable to take some other things into consideration towards a vote.
Sure, that's fine.
We could forward that to the superintendent's office and we can get it on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports from committees or subcommittees? Any other committees? Members forum. Any members want to be formed? Mrs. Hennessy.
So I'm sure I'm going to say what all of us are feeling. Absolutely an incredibly proud weekend to be a member of this school committee, a member of the Marlborough Public Schools, a parent, and a community member. I can't even begin to truly express how happy I am for everyone, and as Mike articulated, our superintendent articulated, everyone to come together to think out of the box and to find a solution and make a community exceptionally proud to support our class of 2020. So I can't really even articulate how happy I am, because it was amazing to be able to watch from the moment that I walked down from my parked car and was greeted by a number of the police that were right there to greet me, a number of staff members, everyone masked, welcoming me, and excited to be there, even though it was going to be 2 long days. It was 2 long days that were exceptionally well worth it. And we beat Mother Nature with crazy rainstorms that happened literally right after the last ceremony on Saturday, and incredible heat that was greeting everyone on Saturday. But it was amazing, and I just thank you all and everybody in the community for making it happen. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love being here in Marlborough, and I'm really proud to be a part of any little bit of this that I am. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members?
I would like to also echo
This is Ryan.
exactly everything that Catherine said.
Oh, any other members?
Mr. Chair.
This is Bodenhenger.
So I echo as well. It was amazing. I also want to first thank the superintendent for your comments regarding the state of affairs that we're in this country. And I wanted to point out that there were a few peaceful protests here in Marlborough. I was able to attend one of them and watched on video another, and I was so blown away and impressed with the high school students. There were actually some middle school students there as well, but the high school students some of them spoke. They were amazing. They were articulate. They had signs, and they were in groups, and they conducted themselves perfectly. They were there for the right reason, and they made their feelings known in a respectful, peaceful way, and I was very proud.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mrs. Matthews.
Thank you. I too want to echo what has been said by Ms. Hennessy and Ms. Ryan and Ms. Bodenhenger and the superintendent, and thank you for everything you guys have done. On a business note, I have reviewed the warrant, and I will be signing it tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Any other members? And I can't let it go without thanking the superintendent. Without his leadership, we wouldn't have had what we had on Saturday and Sunday. And I think we were both, the superintendent and I were both on a phone call today with Chief Georgie, and he was saying, you know, thank you very much as a community, because he has a graduate that's graduating from high school, and she's not getting anything because of the high school she went to. So she's not going to see her graduation. So people that have missed it, they need to go on and take a look at what the city of Marlborough did on Saturday and Sunday. Take a look on Channel 8 or on Facebook. But it was a great 2 days. So with that, entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Mr. Gary's absent. Mrs. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden-Hedinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.